My name is Maya, and I'm 34. For the last decade, I've been the fixer, the responsible one, the chief of staff for my mother's chaotic life, a life she recently, and very successfully, rebranded as the Simply Diana lifestyle empire. I wasn't just her daughter. I was her ghostwriter, her brand strategist, her PR crisis manager, and her unpaid on-call therapist. I poured my youth, my own inheritance, and every last drop of my ambition into building her from a small-town, divorced homemaker into a nationally recognized lifestyle guru and a multi-million-dollar brand. I did it because I'm her daughter, and I thought I was building our future, our family equity. Then, last month, she introduced me to my long-lost brother and demoted me to community manager. Yesterday, I was accidentally copied on an email from her lawyer. It turns out, my brother is her new business partner, and they're in the process of dissolving the company I built to create a new one, without me, cutting me out of every dime I've earned and every bit of the legacy I created. They thought I was just practice, a gullible, good girl who would just go away. They forgot who built the house. They forgot who has all the blueprints, all the keys, and all the receipts. And they definitely forgot that I'm the one who controls the teleprompter at her $10 million launch party next week. This isn't just a family fight anymore. This is a hostile takeover, and I'm taking my company back. If you've ever felt like the responsible one, the one holding everything together while everyone else takes the credit, then buckle up. You're going to want to see this. And hey, let me know in the comments if you've ever had a family moment that made you want to just burn it all down. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this story is a dumpster fire you won't want to miss. My mother, Diana Collins, is a beautiful woman. That's been the defining fact of her entire life, and by extension, mine. She was the small-town beauty queen who married her high school sweetheart, my father, and then spent the next 20 years feeling trapped and resentful, convinced she was destined for a much grander stage. When I was 16, she finally divorced him, a messy, bitter split that left my dad, a quiet, kind-hearted accountant, completely shell-shocked. It left me, of course, as the designated mediator, the emotional go-between, for two adults who suddenly couldn't be in the same room. I escaped to Chicago for college, got a degree in communications and marketing, and started building a life for myself. I landed a decent job at a PR firm, I had my own tiny apartment, and I was finally, for the first time, just not Diana's responsible daughter. But the pull of my mother's chaotic orbit was strong. After the divorce, she was adrift. She was in her late 40s, her beauty queen look starting to fade, and she had no real skills or job experience. She was just Diana. And she was miserable. That's when her blog started. It was 2015. It was a sad, typo-riddled live journal page where she'd post bitter, vague pseudo-poems about new beginnings and blurry photos of her garden. It was, frankly, an embarrassment. But then, my grandmother, my mom's mom, a sharp, practical woman who saw Diana's narcissism with crystal-clear vision, passed away. She left the bulk of her modest estate to my mom, but she left a separate $40,000 bequest directly to me. "Don't let your mother squander this, Maya," the note with the check said. "Build something for yourself." I should have listened, but I saw my mom, drowning in her own self-pity, and I saw a project. I saw a way to asterisk fix her, to give her the purpose she so desperately craved. "Mom," I proposed, "let's get serious about your blog. Let's build a brand." I used my entire $40,000 inheritance as seed money. I hired a professional web developer to build a sleek, Simply Diana website. I bought her a professional camera and a laptop. I paid for a high-end photo shoot. And, most importantly, I took over the content. For the next 8 years, I lived a shadow life. I worked my demanding 9-to-5 PR job in Chicago, and then, from 5 p.m. until 2 a.m., I saw was Simply Diana. I was the ghostwriter for her entire identity. I wrote the heartfelt, vulnerable blog posts about a single mother finding her strength after divorce, a narrative I invented, conveniently ignoring the fact she'd spent most of that time complaining. I developed the simple suppers recipes, which were my own quick meals, as she famously couldn't cook. I crafted the Midwest mindfulness essays, which I wrote while mainlining espresso and battling a stress-induced eye twitch. I was the one who researched social media strategies, who built her Instagram from 0 to 500,000 followers, who cultivated her authentic voice. The brand exploded. Simply Diana became a thing. She was the Midwest's answer to Martha Stewart, but more relatable and grounded. The brand deals started rolling in. A cookware line, a series of inspirational journals, all filled with quotes had curated. A massive 5-figure contract with a national grocery chain. The money was insane. And I, her partner, was still on a consulting fee. I was paying my own Chicago rent, my own student loans, while the Simply Diana, LLC, which my mom was the sole owner of, was raking in millions. "Don't worry about the equity, honey," she'd say, waving her hand dismissively whenever I tried to formalize our partnership. "It's all family. This is our Naftal legacy. When I retire, it's all going to be yours anyway. Why complicate things with lawyers?" I was a fool. I know that. But I was a fool who was desperate for her mother's approval. An approval I only seemed to get when the quarterly revenue reports were good. My own life was a casualty of this arrangement. I was 34. I hadn't been on a real date in 3 years. My friends had stopped inviting me out, knowing I'd just say I had to work. My work, of course, was ghostwriting a heartfelt, emotionally resonant blog post for my mother about the importance of work-life balance. The irony was so thick, it was suffocating. My own escape fund was non-existent. Every time I managed to save a few $1,000s, a new crisis would pop up. "Maya, the tax bill for the LLC is huge. I didn't plan for it. And I, the dutiful daughter, would wire the money to cover the shortfall, just to protect the family business. I wasn't just building her brand. I was personally funding its structural flaws, blinded by the verbal promise that one day it would all be mine. The resentment was a slow-growing cancer. The breaking point came about 6 months ago. We landed a massive deal with a home goods superstore. It was a deal, time I had pursued, time I had negotiated, and time I had built the entire pitch deck for. It was a game changer. My mother's response? Well, it's about time. I was getting a little bored, honestly. She then used the initial advance to buy a new Jaguar while I was still driving my 2012 Honda Civic. That night, I cried myself to sleep, not from sadness, but from a cold, hard rage. I was done being the help. I was gearing up for the big fight. I was drafting an email to my mother and our new, very expensive corporate lawyer, formally demanding my role as COO be recognized and that we begin the process of transferring a 40% equity stake in the company to my name. I had my list of contributions, my documented hours, my before and after stats of the brand's growth. I was ready for battle. But my mother, it turned out, was playing a completely different game. She called me on a Monday, her voice filled with a strange, breathless excitement I hadn't heard in years. "Maya, you need to come home. This weekend. It's a miracle. You have to be here." "Mom, I'm in the middle of the Q3 launch plan," I said, annoyed. "Can't it wait?" "No, it cannot wait," she snapped. "This is family, Maya. The nos nitan said important thing. Be here, Saturday, 7 p.m. And wear something nice." She hung up. I drove the 5 hours from Chicago, my stomach in knots. Was she sick? Was my dad, who I barely spoke to, but who still existed, sick? The miracle wording had me terrified. I walked into my mother's house, a house my success had paid for, and it was different. The minimalist, beige Simply Diana aesthetic was gone. The walls were painted a deep, dramatic teal. Modern, slightly bizarre art hung everywhere. And in the middle of the living room, next to my beaming mother, stood a man I had never seen before. He was about 30, devastatingly handsome in a scruffy, artistic way, with a man bun, a perfectly curated vintage t-shirt, and a smile that was an exact, unsettling echo of my mother's. "Maya, darling, you're here," she gushed, pulling me into a cloud of her expensive perfume. "I want you to meet someone. This is Tristan." Tristan stepped forward and took my hand, his eyes sparkling with a rehearsed, charismatic sincerity. "Maya, it is an absolute honor to finally meet you," he said, his voice a smooth baritone. "I've heard so much about you." I just stared. "I'm sorry," I said, pulling my hand back. Who are you?" My mother took his arm, her face shining with an almost maniacal joy. "Maya, Tristan is my son." The words just hung there, limp and nonsensical, in the middle of the newly painted living room. "You're... What? Mom, you don't have a son." "I do," she laughed, a high, tinkling sound. "I gave him up for adoption, years before I even met your father. He found me. Can you believe it? My son, my long-lost son." Tristan launched into his story. A closed adoption, a loving, but, he implied, stifling, adoptive family in California, a lifelong feeling of emptiness, a genealogical search, and finally, the miraculous reunion with his birth mother. It was a perfect, Teflon-coated, made-for-TV movie script. And I didn't believe a single goddamn word of it. I looked at my mother, who was gazing at him like he was a visiting deity. She had, in the space of what I later learned was only 6 weeks, completely rearranged her world around this stranger. So, I said slowly, my PR brain already spinning, analyzing the angles. This is a lot. Wow, Mom, isn't it? She beamed. And he's a creative. Just like me. He's a sculptor, a poet. He just gets the brand in a way that, well, you know. The you know was a clear, sharp jab at me. You, Maya, with your spreadsheets and your logic, you never got it. But he does. The rest of the dinner was surreal. Tristan talked and talked and talked. He talked about his vision for the brand. He had ideas. He wanted to launch a Simply Diana Man vertical. He wanted to do a podcast on the struggles of the modern creative. He was, in short, a perfect walking, breathing caricature of my brother Leo, but with better hair and a more manipulative vocabulary. And my mother was eating it up. She hung on his every word, laughing at his brilliant insights, touching his arm. It was nauseating. I sat there, the responsible daughter, the one who had built the entire damn brand, and I was completely invisible. I had been replaced. The final, devastating blow came over dessert, a store-bought cheesecake. My mother still couldn't be bothered to use her own simple suppers recipes. Maya, honey, Tristan and I have been talking. My mother began, her eyes sparkling. And we have the most wonderful news. He's agreed to come on board as the new chief creative officer of the brand. He's going to be my official partner. He'll be taking the lead on all new creative, and he'll be the heir to the Simply Diana legacy. I just stared at her. The heir, your partner, and what does that make me? Oh, this is the best part for you, she said, smiling brightly, as if she were giving me a gift. You're free. All that boring, stressful business strategy and contract stuff you hate? Tristan has a Timer Fantastics Timer business manager who can handle all that. You can finally step back. You can just manage the blog comments and handle the email newsletter. It'll be so much less pressure on you. She was demoting me from shadow CEO to community manager. In my own company. The company I had built with my own inheritance and my own blood, sweat, and tears. I stood up, my chair scraping back violently. You can't be serious. Maya, don't be dramatic, she snapped, her smile vanishing. This is an incredible opportunity. Tristan has the kind of dynamic, high-level vision that we need to get to the next level. Your work has been fine, but it's stale. You're a wonderful technician, but you're not a visionary. I was speechless. I looked at Tristan, who was watching me with a look of mild, pitying amusement. I looked at my dad, who was just placidly eating his cheesecake, completely checked out. And besides, my mother continued, her voice turning cold and final. Tristan is my true son. He's my blood. He's the son I always dreamed of having. You were just practice. You were just practice. The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. All the years of sacrifice, all the late nights, all the money, all the loyalty, all of it was just practice. I wasn't her daughter. I was her rough draft. And she had just found her final, perfect version. I see, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Well, I wish you, and Tristan, the best of luck with the brand. Thank you, honey, my mom said, already turning back to Tristan, her smile returning. We're going to be so happy. I walked out of the house. I got in my car, and I drove the 5 hours back to Chicago, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I didn't cry. I was past tears. I was in a place of cold, clear, stratospheric rage. They thought I was practice. They thought I was the help. They thought I would just go away. They had no idea who they were dealing with. They had just demoted the one and only person who knew how their entire fraudulent empire actually worked. The next morning, I woke up to an email. Account deactivated. I had been locked out. My admin access to the Simply Diana website, the social media accounts, the corporate servers, all of it. Revoked. It was so fast, so efficient, it had to have been planned. That family dinner wasn't an introduction. It was a termination. I should have panicked. Instead, I just felt a cold, sharp clarity. They were sloppy. They were arrogant. They thought that just because they had changed the passwords, I was out. They forgot who built the damn system. When I'd first used my $40,000 inheritance to build the Simply Diana website, I hadn't just hired a developer. I had been the developer in the early days. I had set up the backend, the hosting, the servers. And I had built myself a backdoor. A ghost admin account. A set of credentials that were not tied to any user, but were embedded in the site's root code. A secret key that only I knew. I had created it as a failsafe, in case the site ever crashed and everyone else was locked out. I had never, In my wildest dreams, imagined I would one day use it to spy on my own mother. I logged in. My credentials still worked. They hadn't been smart enough to do a full code audit. They had just changed the user-facing passwords. From my hidden admin account, I could see cite everything. Every email, every file, every strategy document. And they were busy. They were in the middle of launching Project Legacy, as their new lawyers' emails called it. I sat there, drinking my coffee, and watched in real time as my mother and Tristan conspired to erase me from my own life. The email thread was horrifying. It was between my mother, Tristan, and a shark-toothed corporate lawyer. The subject line: LLC dissolution and asset transfer. They weren't just restructuring. They were systematically dissolving Simply Diana, LLC, the company that held all the contracts and revenue, the one I had the verbal family equity claim to. Simultaneously, they were forming a new corporation, Diana and Company. The plan was to sell all of Simply Diana's assets: the brand name, the website, the social media followers, the multi-million-dollar brand deals Kaimai and I had negotiated, to the new company for the token sum of $1. The new company's ownership structure was laid out in a gleaming, horrifying spreadsheet. Tristan, 90% owner. Diana, 10% owner. My name, Maya Collins, was nowhere to be found. I was not an owner. I was not a partner. I was not even a footnote. I was, as the lawyer's notes chillingly confirmed, a potential liability to be managed. A draft of my redundancy termination letter was already attached. But why? Why this elaborate, convoluted, and deeply illegal shell game? Why give Tristan, a man she had known for less than 2 months, 90% of her empire? I kept digging. I went into her private email folder, a folder I had set up for her years ago and still had access to. And I found the Shariel smoking gun. It wasn't about legacy. It was about Dunterb debt. My mother, the successful self-made lifestyle guru, was a fraud in more ways than one. She was in catastrophic personal debt. A series of high-risk real estate investments she had made on the side, without telling me, had imploded. She owed creditors, a lot of creditors, nearly $2 million. They were closing in. Simply Diana, LLC, was her only real asset. If her creditors sued her, they could seize the company. But if she transferred the assets to a new company, one primarily owned by a third party, Tristan, the assets would be shielded from her personal liability. It all clicked into place with a sickening thud. Tristan wasn't a long-lost son. He was a con man. This wasn't a miracle reunion. It was a back-alley deal. He gets 90% of her company, and in exchange, he acts as the new heir and allows her to use him as a human shield to hide her money. The entire "your stale" speech, the "you were" practice line, it was all a performance, a cruel, calculated script to get me out of the way so they could pull off their final, desperate heist. I felt a surge of rage so pure it was almost disorienting. They weren't just cutting me out. They were challengeing my work, my legacy, to protect themselves from their own spectacular stupidity and greed. But rage, I've learned, is just energy. It needs a direction. I was a PR strategist. I knew how to build a narrative. And I was now in possession of the most explosive story of the year. My mother had just handed me a nuke, and I was trying to decide which of her glass houses to drop it on. I kept digging. I had to be smart. This couldn't just be an emotional outburst. It had to be a controlled detonation. I still had access to everything. The cloud server, the back end of the blog, the original files. I went back to the very beginning. I found the real Simply Diana archives. The original, typo-filled, borderline unhinged blog posts my mother had written before I took over. The audio files from our early brainstorming sessions, which were really just me, in my 20s, pitching fully formed ideas while my mother said things like, "I don't know, Maya, that sounds complicated. Can't you just write it for me?" And then I found the Holy Grail. The one file I had saved, instinctively, all those years ago. It was a high-resolution scan of the original $40,000 cashier's check from my inheritance account, made payable to Simply Diana, LLC. And in the memo line in my own neat, clear handwriting were 2 words: seed money. I had the origin story. I had the conspiracy. And I had the receipts. I had the entire unvarnished truth of the Simply Diana brand, from its fraudulent conception to its criminal restructuring. They thought I was just community manager. They had no idea I was, and always had been, the system administrator. They had locked me out of the front door, forgetting that I was the one who had built the entire goddamn house. I didn't explode. I didn't send a furious email. I went cold. My grief and rage coalesced into a single sharp point of absolute icy focus. I was a PR and marketing expert. My mother and her new boy toy had just given me the ultimate crisis to manage. My grief crisis. And I was going to manage it to perfection. First, I played the part of the defeated, heartbroken daughter. I sent my mother a single short email from my personal account, the one they hadn't locked me out of. Mom, I'm still in shock from your decision. What you said. It was devastating. But I love you. And I love this brand. If you're really sure about this, I won't fight you. I'll help you with the transition. I'll stay on to manage the community, as you asked. I want to still be a part of your life. It was a pathetic, groveling, perfectly calibrated performance of the gullible daughter they believed me to be. The reply from Tristan, of all people, came almost instantly. Hey Maya, knew you'd come around. It's a smart move. Don't worry, once Mom and I level up the brand, there will be plenty of scraps for you. Just hang tight. Scraps. The arrogance made me smile. This was going to be easier than I thought. For the next 2 weeks, I was the most helpful, most pathetic community manager on earth. I answered blog comments with saccharine sweetness. I forwarded them ideas for the new brand. And all the while, I was building my arsenal. I used my Ghost admin access to create a secure, hidden partition on the Simply Diana web server. Into this, I downloaded Smyfe everything. The incriminating email chains, the original, embarrassing blog posts, the audio files of our brainstorming sessions, the scanned check for $40,000, the new LLC restructuring documents, the damning evidence of my mother's $2 million personal debt. I had it all in one, neat, explosive package. Then, the big event was announced. Diana and Tristan had secured their first major deal as Diana and Company. A $10 million partnership with Omni Media, a massive, family-focused conglomerate that was notoriously risk-averse. This deal would launch the Simply Diana magazine, a TV show on their network, and a line of home goods. It was their huge, public coming-out party. The deal was to be announced at the prestigious Women in Business Summit in New York. Diana was the keynote speaker. The entire event would be live, streamed to an audience of hundreds of thousands. Maya, darling, my mother called, her voice full of fake, magnanimous warmth. We want you to be there. In the tech booth, of course. Just to, monitor the live, stream comments. Make sure our community feels the love. They weren't just demoting me, they were forcing me to watch my own execution. Of course, Mom, I said, my voice quiet. I'd be honored. I offered to help them prepare the keynote presentation. Tristan, you're so busy with the high-level vision, I'd said on a conference call. Let me handle the nuts and bolts. I'll build the slide deck in the system. It's the least I can do to support you. Good thinking, Maya, Tristan had said, his voice patronizing. You stick to what you're good at, the technical stuff. We'll handle the big picture. They gave me full, unfettered admin access to the presentation software, the teleprompter feed, and the live stream controls. They were so blinded by their own arrogance, so convinced of my weakness, that they literally handed me the detonator. I built them the most beautiful presentation you've ever seen. It was filled with glowing, soft-focus photos of Diana and Tristan. It had inspiring quotes about legacy and authenticity. I had to stop myself from gagging. It was a masterpiece of corporate bullshit. And then I built my kill switch. With a single pre-programmed hotkey, I could seamlessly swap the live stream feed from the approved_keynote, PPTX, to a different file. A file I had named, simply the_real_story, PPTX. This second presentation was my life's work. It was a cold, clean, data-driven story of fraud. It had the side-by-side comparisons of the original blog posts versus Time ghostwritten versions. It had the audio file of my mother saying, I don't know, Maya, can't you just write it to me? It had the high-resolution scan of my $40,000 check. It had the email thread about the LLC dissolution. And it had, as its grand finale, the email about my mother's $2 million debt, and the smoking gun email from her lawyer outlining the plan to use Tristan to hide the assets from creditors. I didn't stop there. I was a PR professional, after all. I drafted a full, explosive press release, complete with all the evidence, titled, The Ghost in the Brand, The Real Story of Simply Diana, and the $10 million Lie. I compiled a list of email addresses, every major media outlet, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, TMZ, People, every gossip columnist in the country, every investor on the Omni Media contact list, and the entire Simply Diana subscriber database. I set up an automated email service. The send button would be triggered by the same hotkey that swapped the presentation feed. The second the truth went live on that stage, it would also go live in every major newsroom in the country. I flew to New York for the summit. I was in the tech booth, high above the ballroom, a headset on, looking like a nameless, low-level AV tech. Diana and Tristan were in the front row, schmoozing with the CEO of Omni Media. Diana caught my eye and gave me a little, "You're doing great, sweetie" wave. Tristan even came up to the booth before the show. "Just make sure the audio is good on my entrance, Maya," he said, tapping the glass. "And don't screw this up. This is the big leagues." I just smiled, my hand resting on the keyboard. "Don't worry, Tristan," I said. "It's going to be a show no one ever forgets." The ballroom was packed. Hundreds of the most powerful women in media and business, all there to celebrate authenticity and empowerment. Thousands more were watching the live stream, which I could see was trending on Twitter. The CEO of Omni Media, a formidable woman named Cynthia Davies, took the stage to introduce my mother. "Our next speaker," she boomed, "is the living embodiment of the modern self-made woman. She is a testament to the power of grit, grace, and, above all, authenticity. Please welcome the incredible, the one and only, Diana Collins." The applause was thunderous. My mother walked out, looking like $1,000,000 in a custom-made white suit. She beamed, she waved, she soaked it all in. She stepped up to the podium, the massive screen behind her showing a beautiful, soft-focus photo of herself, with the words, "Simply Diana, my authentic journey." She began her speech. The speech Nuff had written for her months ago, before I knew about Tristan. It was all about her struggle as a single mother, about building a dream from nothing but a keyboard and a flicker of hope. "People ask me all the time," she said, her voice catching with perfectly rehearsed emotion. "Diana, how did you do it? How did you build this all by yourself?" She paused, looking directly into the camera, a tear glistening in her eye. And I always tell them the same thing. I did it, by being true to my authentic self. The truth is the only foundation that matters. That was my cue. I pressed F12. The keynote hotkey. The massive screen behind my mother flickered. The glowing picture of her face was instantly replaced by a stark, black background with 5 simple white words. "Authenticity, a ghostwriter's case study." Asterisk. The crowd murmured, confused. My mother froze, her smile twitching. She looked at the teleprompter. It was no longer scrolling her speech. It was scrolling, over and over, the words. "You were just practice." Asterisk. "We seem to be having a technical difficulty," she stammered, tapping the microphone. "Oh, the audio is fine, Mom," I said. Not into my headset, but into the live mic I had just patched into the main feed from my tech booth. My voice, calm and cold, boomed across the ballroom and out to the thousands on the live stream. "This isn't a difficulty. It's a correction." On the screen, the first slide popped up. A side-by-side comparison of her original, typo-filled 2015 blog post next to the polished, viral article ×1 had ghostwritten for her. "Diana," I said, my voice echoing, "claims she built her brand on her authentic voice. The truth is, she hasn't written a single word of her own content since 2015. I have." The audio feed switched. The audience was now hearing a crystal-clear MP3 file. Maya, my voice 8 years ago. "Okay, Mom, so for this week's post, let's brainstorm ideas about vulnerability." Diana, her voice. "Ugh, I don't know, Maya, that sounds complicated. It sounds sad. Can't you just, write it for me? Just make it sound like me, but better?" The ballroom was absolutely silent. People were pulling out their phones, recording. The CEO of Omni Media, Cynthia Davies, had gone pale, her face a mask of cold fury. The screen changed again. A high-resolution scan of the $40,000 cashier's check from my inheritance account. The memo line, "SD seed money," was circled in red. "Diana claims she built her brand from nothing," my voiceover continued. "The truth is, Kerr funded this company with my own inheritance from my grandmother." Diana was visibly shaking now, her eyes darting between the screen and the tech booth, where I was just a dark silhouette. "Turn it off," she shrieked at a panicked-looking AV tech. "Turn it off." "I wouldn't do that," I said calmly into the mic, "because the second this feed is cut, my full press kit, with all the evidence you're seeing now, is automatically emailed to every major news outlet and your entire subscriber list. But you've still got 5 minutes left in your keynote, and the finale is the best part." The screen changed again, this time to the email thread. Subject, Project Legacy, Restructuring, *. "Diana," I said, my voice dripping with ice. Talk to us about legacy. Talk to us about your new heir, Tristan, the long-lost son you met 6 weeks ago. The audience gasped. Talk to us about how you're dissolving the company I built to create a new one, 90% owned by him. Talk to us about this email. The screen zoomed in on the smoking gun. The lawyer's words. This dissolves any prior informal equity claims, specifically M. Collins's. We can proceed with her termination. And then, I said, my voice dropping for the final blow, talk to us about why. Talk to us about the real authenticity. Talk to us about your $2 million real estate debt. Talk to us about how you're using Tristan as a human shield to hide your assets from creditors, all while cutting out the daughter who built your entire fraudulent empire from the ground up. The last slide was the email I had found in my dad's account. The one from my mom. Asterisk, she's a good girl, but so gullible. She'll be fine. She's smart. She can just make the money back. Asterisk. I let that hang in the air for a full 10 seconds. Then, I hit the final key. The automated email blast went out. Every phone in the audience buzzed in unison. The Simply Diana blog, which I still controlled, went live with a new, final post, My Authentic Journey, by Maya Collins, founder and ghostwriter. The live feed was pure, unadulterated chaos. Diana was crumpled over the podium. Cynthia Davies and a team of furious-looking executives were storming the stage. Tristan? He was gone. He had slipped out a side exit the second the word debt appeared on the screen. I took off my headset, picked up my bag, and calmly walked out of the tech booth. I didn't run. I walked right through the lobby, past the pandemonium, past the flashing cell phone cameras, and the screaming event staff. As I pushed open the heavy glass doors to the New York street, I took my first deep, clean breath in 10 years. I was no longer a ghost. I was free. The aftermath was exactly what I'd designed it to be, a total, controlled demolition. The $10 million Omni Media deal evaporated on the spot, of course. They immediately filed a lawsuit against Simply Diana, LLC, the now worthless company my mom was still the sole owner of, for fraud and misrepresentation. Diana's creditors, alerted by the public explosion of her finances, descended like sharks. She was ruined, publicly, financially, and completely. The brand I had spent 8 years building was dead in less than 8 minutes. My dad, in a move that surprised me, called me. He left a voicemail. He sounded old, tired. I saw the news, he said. I didn't know, Maya. I swear, I didn't know any of that. What she did to you, it was wrong. I'm so sorry. It was the first and only apology I ever received. And me? I was in my Chicago apartment, fielding calls. Not from my family. From the New York Times, from Good Morning America, from book publishers and literary agents, all scrambling for the exclusive rights to the story of the ghost in the brand. I sold the story. The book I wrote, half memoir, half business ethics textbook, became a bestseller. I used the advance to finally start my own company, a crisis PR and brand strategy firm. We specialize in one thing: real authenticity. We help real entrepreneurs, especially women, build brands that are honest from the ground up, with ironclad contracts and clear equity. My tagline? Don't get ghosted. Get the credit you deserve. Business, as I'd predicted, is very, very good.